No one can conquer an enemy without coming in sight of him. Immanuel Swedenborg. There is absolutely no shame in honestly admitting to yourself that at present you are dreadfully lost and do not know who you are. You are adrift in a tempestuous psychological sea, a raging sea filled with powerful unseen currents, which are highly toxic emotional states, and with the scary, faceless creatures which are long-held fallacious beliefs, opinions, and ideas that harangue and haunt day and night, convulsively, piloting you through a superficial, senseless existence, which you refer to as my life. This emotion-filled, highly disconcerting admission of your profound lostness is a necessary first step for the courageous seeker who is genuinely interested in consciously reuniting with the essential self, the true you behind the veil. For the mass of humanity, this highly unnerving initial step is vehemently avoided. Very few human beings have the self-honesty and courage to take this radical, life-changing first step. They prefer to tightly cling to and hide behind the veil created by the oh-so-familiar false identity, the impostor self, which at best can only provide them with a constantly vacillating false sense of self, life, and security. The self-shattering discovery that in fact there is a false self, an impostor self, now masquerading as you, surreptitiously controlling every aspect of your life, is something that all sincere truth seekers must finally acknowledge as factual. Very few human beings have the courage to acknowledge the truth concerning their severely fragmented inner condition, to become consciously aware and not turn away from the fact that it is an impostor self that is now controlling their behavior and providing them with a highly distorted view of reality. A sincere, heartfelt acknowledgement of our muddled inner condition is the first and tentative step one must take to free oneself. This is required in order to begin the gradual process whereby you can free yourself from the tyranny of the deeply entrenched impostor self that you have unknowingly permitted to masquerade as you. Without a heartfelt personal acknowledgement of our actual inner condition, there is no way to start the process of freeing ourselves from the smothering confines of the self-made inner prison cell we now inhabit. It is in the candid seeing of our actual inner condition, followed by our deliberate refusal to be controlled by or identified with the irrational rantings of the impostor self, that we can finally unlock the prison cell door. In order to defeat what is now defeating you, you must first thoroughly understand the modus operandi of the adversary. As we proceed, regard the names adversary, impostor self, ego self, acquired self, and false self as equivalent. The first step in understanding the adversary is to acknowledge the following fact. The adversary is none other than the impostor self, who at the present time has taken up residence within your mind, providing you with a very convincing false sense of identity. The stealthy adversary that will be grappled with throughout the adversarial contest, the epic inner journey, is the well-entrenched impostor self now masquerading as you. The impostor self that is now residing within you as your present me sense of identity is a perfectly patterned facsimile which accurately embodies the contents of your memory, and as such consists of nothing more than the accumulated bytes of information you have collected throughout your life. The disposition of the impostor self is totally unique to each individual for the simple reason that no two individuals have identical life experiences. the bytes of injurious information that have been projected into each individual's memory throughout their life are uniquely individual, thus creating the inharmonious state we now observe worldwide, where each individual is living within a self-centered, bubble-like mental and emotional construct. The bubble-like mental and emotional construct forms the incorporeal body of the impostor self now residing within your mind. Tragically, you have mistakenly presumed that this long-standing mental and emotional construct is you. For purposes of this book, the word contest signifies a conflict between two adversaries. The entire scope of this contest transpires within the mind of an individual. This contest is brought about when an individual has a faint inkling that their life is being surreptitiously directed and governed by a destructive, unseen compulsion within him or herself. Be assured, the destructive, unseen compulsion that is surreptitiously directing and governing your life is not the work of the devil, a demon, a disembodied evil spirit, Satan, a malicious ghost, an alien, a horrifying phantom, or any other imagined malevolent force. This destructive, unseen compulsion can be found much closer to home than most individuals are willing to acknowledge, and can be easily found by anyone who is willing to honestly examine the contents of their mind. In every case, what will be found upon honest self-examination is the imposter self that has been masquerading as you. It is extremely important that you don't ignore the first faint inkling that your life is being governed and directed by a deleterious, unseen compulsion. Your first faint inkling, no matter how seemingly insignificant it might seem to you at the time, is in fact your first momentary glimpse of the imposter self in action. As you continue to diligently observe your moment-to-moment behavior, your sightings of the imposter self will become more frequent. The following partial list can be used to help you identify the deleterious actions of the imposter self. As you read the list, it is vitally important that you understand that these words are describing the temperament or character traits that characterize the imposter self masquerading as you. Most likely, you have wrongly identified yourself with this imposter self your entire life, thinking it is you. It is not you. As you consider the list, you will become aware that you are not alone. The imposter self has been in control throughout the world population for a long time. Consider yourself greatly blessed that you are now in position, with the information you are receiving, to put an end to the long-standing and tragic self-deception. The following list will assist you in the process of identifying the chief character traits of the imposter self. Make a copy of this list and keep it with you at all times. The more reminders you have of your present inner condition, the more rapid your reawakening to true selfhood as an individualized part of the universal system. Imposter self's chief character traits: fear, hate, resentment, blame, rage, vanity, worry, greed, hypocrisy, jealousy, judgment, envy, vengeance, accusation, covetousness, criticism, false pride, laziness, lying, apathy, shame, unforgivingness, despondency, condemnation, anger, impatience, desperation, anxiousness, sadness, pretense, defensiveness, hostility, pomposity, stubbornness, dread, meanness, self-pity, depression, aggressiveness, deceitfulness, bitterness, sulking, panic, irritation, pettiness, and more. Make it one of your aims to continue adding more imposter self-character traits to your list. There are plenty more of these stealthy saboteurs to be identified, lurking inside the darkened recesses of your mind. The more imposter self-character traits you discover sequestered within you, the greater your opportunity to no longer be subject to their damaging effect upon your life and the lives of others. Remember, all imposter self-character traits are merely a collection of deeply ingrained specious thoughts and feelings which you have unknowingly allowed to govern your behavior and tragically assumed was you. Who has not at one time or other felt a sourness, wrath, selfishness, envy, and pride, which he could not tell what to do with or how to bear, rising up in him without his consent, casting a blackness over his thoughts, and then as suddenly going off again, either by cheerfulness of the sun or air, or some agreeable accident, and again at times as suddenly returning upon him. Sufficient indications are these to every man that there is a dark guest imposter self within him. William Law. As you go through your day, you will observe different imposter self-character traits taking control of your body, mind, and emotions. Different daily circumstances will trigger different traits. For example, someone calls you a jerk and you instantly react by getting angry, feeling sad or resentful, getting hostile or anxious, or possibly all these different traits converge in consciousness simultaneously. Do you need more examples? Your present life generously provides one example after another for your thoughtful consideration. What you are observing is the imposter self taking control of your body, mind, and emotions. The fact that you are able to observe what is transpiring indicates that there is an observer present that is free from what is being observed. Where once there was no perceived difference in your consciousness between you and the actions of the imposter self, now you are able to stand back, an impartial observer as it were, and see the damaging effects caused by the actions of the imposter self upon your life and the lives of others. From your new vantage point as an impartial observer, you can now choose whether you want to continue to be subject to the familiar rantings of the imposter self or not. The choice is yours as you continue to diligently practice standing back, impartially observing the impetuous behaviors of the imposter self. You will gradually become increasingly aware that you have the authority and power to stop being governed and lead astray by the incessant dictates of the imprudent imposter self. It is important that you don't complicate the information presented. Keep it simple. For example, if you are experiencing anger or any of the other imposter self's character traits, don't get mentally and emotionally jammed up trying to figure out why it is happening. If you have grasped what has been presented in this book so far, you now know why it is happening. Just stand back and witness the fact of your anger, and at the same time realize that what you are now experiencing as anger is merely a character trait of the imposter self that has temporarily taken control of your body, mind, and emotions. That is why the list of the imposter self's character traits is so important to have readily at hand. Without the aid of your list, it is very difficult to remember in the heat of the moment what is actually responsible for the capricious behavior you are exhibiting. The list helps to keep you from being carried away mentally and emotionally. It helps to keep you grounded in the present moment. The imposter self's character trait list is an invaluable tool that will tirelessly continue to assist you in the process of defeating what has been defeating you. Now, with list in hand, you are standing back, observing, watching what is happening, rather than being identified with what is happening. Once you have experienced watching the happening, instead of being the happening, you will be empowered to repeat this life-saving process of watching the happening as you go through your day. Don't expect the dissolution of the imposter self to happen overnight. The imposter self is well entrenched and is a very skillful adversary. The human race has been under the hypnotic spell of the imposter self for countless generations. The present dire state of the world provides ample proof for those with eyes to see. The hypnotic spell can be broken, but you must be willing to honestly acknowledge the actual condition of your inner terrain, your present state of consciousness. You cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. Continued denial is deadly. The present state of the man-made world can best be characterized as a writhing, repugnant, deadly drama. The outer configuration of the repugnant man-made world is precisely fashioned after the repugnant inner configuration of human consciousness. The inner configuration of one's consciousness provides the pattern, template, and blueprint for the outer configuration of one's world. This fact is inescapable for both the individual and the collective. As you implement the life-saving practice of watching the happening, you will come face to face with parts of yourself which are repugnant. Remember, you cannot change what you are unwilling to acknowledge. Honestly facing the repugnant parts of oneself is an absolute prerequisite for anyone wishing to discover their true identity. Very few individuals have the courage to endure the mental and emotional anguish and confusion that results when coming face to face with the repugnant parts of themselves. Remember, you are watching the doings of the imposter self that has temporarily taken control of your body, mind, and emotions. If you heedlessly identify with the doings of the imposter self, claiming them as your own, your sense of identity and your sense of self will immediately be recaptured by your identifying with the imposter self. What you'll increasingly discover as you progress along the path of self-revelation is that you have not been living your life consciously. You have been living a delusory pseudo-life that has been governed and directed by the imposter self, all the time imagining it was you. The Indian Hindu monk Vivekananda offered the following guidance and instruction to his listeners. The first lesson, then, is to sit for some time and let the mind run on. The mind is bubbling up all the time. It is like that monkey jumping about. Let the monkey jump as much as he can. You simply watch and wait. Knowledge is power, says the proverb, and that is true. Until you know what the mind is doing, you cannot control it. Give it full length of reins, and many of the most hideous thoughts may come into it. You will be astonished that it was possible for you to think such thoughts, but you will find that each day the mind's vagaries are becoming less and less violent, that each day it is becoming calmer, until at last it will be under perfect control, but we must patiently practice every day. At present, your sense of identity is enmeshed within a very convincing mental and emotional matrix, a psychological construct that you now vehemently maintain is real. Nightmares are certainly convincingly real, until you awaken from the ghastly dream. Then poof, no more nightmare. Leo Tolstoy, the famous novelist, awakened from the horrible nightmare world in which he was living into the ever-present world of reality. He shattered the long-held, seemingly unshakable illusion, and by so doing experienced a transcendent sense of self that was always present, but remained sequestered behind the lies and self-deception he had accepted as true. The following quote describes Tolstoy's impostor self-shattering revelation. As a man in his sleep doubts the reality of his nightmare and yearns to awaken and return to real life, so the average man of our day cannot, in the depth of his heart, believe the terrible condition in which he finds himself, and which is growing worse and worse, to be reality. He yearns to attain a higher reality, the consciousness of which is already within him. Our average man has but to make a conscious effort and ask himself, is not all this an illusion? In order to feel like an awakened sleeper, transported from a hypocritical and horrible nightmare world into a living, peaceful, and joyous world of reality. If you have a sincere desire to awaken to the truth concerning your true identity, you must be willing to stand back, observe your nightmarish, imprudent behaviors, and not turn away. Until you are willing to take an honest look at yourself, you will not be in a position where you can start the process of dispelling the habituated, imprudent behaviors, the deeply entrenched imposter self-traits that have been sabotaging you your entire life. Now, as you go through your day, your daily life becomes your teacher. Every new moment provides an opportunity to become aware of the host of imprudent behaviors that have haunted and hurt you your entire life. Who knows your junk-filled inner terrain better than you? So who but you can change it? As you attentively watch, slowly but surely uncovering and exposing the host of imprudent behaviors that have infiltrated and contaminated your life, you now have the grand opportunity to deliberately choose whether you will continue to remain subservient to their nefarious influences or not. The choice is yours. The prize goes to those who choose wisely. The basic requirements for your successful inner work are listed below. 1. A recognition that at present your life is not your own, and that there are unseen compulsions at work compelling you to behave in ways that are destructive and self-defeating. The source of the unseen compulsions is the imposter self masquerading as you. 2. A recognition that a confused state of mind cannot provide answers to problems that the very same confused mind created in the first place. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Albert Einstein. You must be willing to tentatively consider that you have been deluding yourself for a long time, wrongfully thinking that you are the imposter self. 3. A recognition that you will need to steadfastly observe your moment-to-moment behavior in order to detect the inner tyrant, the imposter self, the instant it attempts to take control of your body, mind, and emotions. Never let us be discouraged with ourselves. It is not when we are conscious of our faults traits, that we are the most wicked. On the contrary, we are less so. We see by a brighter light, and let us remember for our consolation that we never perceive sin's traits till we begin to cure them. François Fenelon. It is what we perceive, see within ourselves, which saves us. Nothing else can do it. 4. A recognition that you will need experienced guidance and instruction if you ever hope to find your way back to your original home as a permanent resident of the universal system. 5. A recognition that experienced guidance and instruction can only be imparted by someone who has successfully found their way home. They are the only guides qualified to keep you headed in the right direction. 6. A recognition that you are 100% responsible for your own freeing, your own deliverance, your own salvation. Yes, you will require qualified, guided assistance and a genuine openness to learning higher precepts, but ultimately no one can save you from yourself but you. 7. A recognition that you will have to wholly devote yourself to learning a new way of viewing both your inner and outer world, a profound, life-changing process where you will be introduced to uplifting, higher ideas and effectual precepts, which, when thoughtfully applied to the living of your daily life, will elevate your level of consciousness to heights you never deemed possible. 8. A recognition that you can start your journey home right now. All are invited. The only requirement for entry is that you be willing to leave your burdensome, time-worn, mental and emotional baggage outside the door. Drop the excess baggage and you discover you have always been at home. You just dozed off for a while and forgot. 9. A recognition that in order to find your way home, you must have an unquenchable desire to do so. In fearing to make an effort to escape from the conditions that are fatal to us, because the future is obscure and unknown, we are like passengers on a sinking ship who crowd into the cabin and refuse to leave it because they have not the courage to enter the boat that would carry them to shore. Leo Tolstoy. You have the power and authority to reclaim your life, but you must be willing to do the required inner work. No one can do the required inner work for you. Once an imprudent behavior is exposed, immediately stop. Stop what you're doing, if not possible physically, then stop psychologically. Be still. No longer permit yourself to continue to behave as you have always behaved in the past. You defeat the adversary by letting go of destructive behaviors that have chronically injured you and others. You simply stop fighting with and kowtowing to what has been controlling and tormenting you for as long as you can remember. For example, if you are experiencing feelings of resentment towards an individual and ordinarily would immediately lash out, stop it. Don't permit yourself to lash out internally or externally. The sure cure for all imprudent behavior is to simply stop it. So simple yet so profoundly effective in eliminating destructive behaviors from your life. Many of the imprudent behaviors will fall away quickly. Others may require your repeated employment of the STOPIT exercise. At the top of your imposter self's character trait list, write the following instruction: stop it, drop it, let it go. Victory goes to those who persist. Be one who persists. Remember, persistent practice precedes mastery. Nothing can trouble him more, nothing can move him, for he has cut all the 1,000 cords of will, ego-centered human will, which hold us bound to the world as desire, fear, envy, anger, drag us here and there in constant pain. He now looks back smiling and at rest on the delusions of the world, which once were able to move and agonize his spirit also. Arthur Schopenhauer. It is important to recognize that what is described as darkness is simply another name to describe the impostor self. In the Bible, the impostor self is referred to as the Prince of Darkness. This title represents the personification of the dark states that remain in control of each individual. To continue to place the blame for our continued abhorrent behavior on the Prince of Darkness, Satan, the devil, or any other convenient scapegoat is to needlessly remain subject to the distorted and destructive influence of the impostor self.